So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. Me being a bottom line guy, why am I not just witnessing to him getting to the bottom line? I catch myself beating around the bush, talking about a ministry or someone to listen to, or Bill Johnson or Andrew Womack, or you know what I mean, when I could be witnessing to that person. So I want to be an extravagant worshiper. I want to worship. I just want to love on Jesus. I just want to love on God. I want to be extravagant, not just on Sundays, but every day of the week. I want to come into worship every day of the week, every morning. That's what I want to do. On the way to work, when I drive to school, I want to be an extravagant worshiper. And it's something that I think is really important. I want to walk with God. I want to hear God. I want to talk to God. I want to have that relationship. I want to hear Him very well. So it's important when we worship that we do that. That it's not just on Sundays. If we just lock Him into four walls, then we're not doing near what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. The other thing is I want to make Him known. I want to be an extreme witness. I want to talk about Him in the grocery store. I want to talk about Him, at school while I'm teaching. And I do. I'm not supposed to, but I do. I want to talk about Him when we're playing golf. And I want to talk about Him all the time. I want to be an extreme witness. I want to do that. That's a goal of mine. And I'm doing the best I can right now, and I'm trying to do better because I just don't want to be that person. People go, oh yeah, he's a Christian. And they come up and talk to you, and you're like, you know what? Come to church. You'll find out more about, I'm missing an opportunity to be an extreme witness. And that's what I want to be. I want Jesus in every conversation. He needs to be. In every conversation with no excuse. All right? Now, I want to talk about something now. There's a principle that runs all through Scripture that points to these two things. I'm going to share a couple with you. There are a lot of Scriptures, but there are a couple that I just want to share with you. 1 Kings 3. Now, I'm just going to explain this a little bit. This is where God asked Solomon to ask for anything he wants, and it'll be given to him, right? Now, what does Solomon ask for? Wisdom. He asked for wisdom. Now, do we know why he asked for wisdom? And this is, as I read through the Bible over and over, this one verse, or this one saying kept coming up over and over. He actually tells us why he asked for wisdom. So, 1 Kings 3:5, at Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, ask, what shall I give you? And Solomon said, you've shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with you. You've continued this great kindness for him, and you have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David. But, now this is a big but, all right? Beck. This is a big but. I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. Okay, now think about that. How many of you have seen that verse before in the Bible? Going out and coming in. Now, I've seen that a bunch of times before, and I always thought, I wonder what he's talking about. Go out or come in. Therefore, because of this reason, I need you to give me wisdom. So, I don't know how to go out or come in. I sat there and I thought about that, and I really started to wonder about that. Now, this jumped out at the Bible. This jumped right out of the Bible at me, and I started thinking, okay, now listen, I'm a sharp guy. I'm a smart guy, and I started thinking, he doesn't know how to go out or come in, so he doesn't know how to operate the door handle and open the doors. He can't go out or come in, and I thought, no, that can't be it. That's a little too easy. That'd be like something that Darren came up with. So, I'm trying to understand what go out and come in means. So, now, I want you to understand there is a principle in the Bible of coming in and going out that we need to explore, right? Solomon said, I will never be a good leader until I understand and know how to do these two things. Go out and come in, all right? Numbers 27, verse 15. Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, let the Lord, the God of spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation who may go out before men and go in or come in before them, who may lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be like sheep which have no shepherd. Now listen, this is Moses. Moses spoke to the Lord. This is where Moses is about to turn over his reins, right? He's getting ready to turn it over to Joshua, and he says, what is he praying about? The last thing he's asking for, he says, Lord, send us someone who knows how to go out and come in. Someone who knows how to take the congregation out and bring the congregation in. So it's important. Think about it. That's Moses. Same thing Solomon said. My father knew how to do it. If I'm going to be a shepherd, then I need to know how to do it. So we got Moses and Solomon saying the same thing. Moses said, God, whatever you do, make sure my replacement knows how to do this. It's that important. All right? Then, when he was actually turning it over to Joshua in Deuteronomy 31 verse 1, then Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel, and he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I can no longer go out and come in. Once again, man, I knew there was a reason, but I kept looking. I keep finding these verses, and I was like, Lord, you got to show me what that is. In other words, the reason for his retirement, Moses' retirement, was he cannot go out or come in any longer. All right? I looked, I read, I studied, and I found the key. I found the answer, and I was very proud of myself. So, Joshua 14, verse 11. As yet I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me, just as my strength was then, and so now is my strength for war. Both for going out and coming in. Going out and coming in is a military term. And it was used off. This is what they're referring to warfare. So this is what Solomon was saying. David was a great warrior. He was a great leader. He was a great king. He knew how to go out to war, and he knew how to come in from war. And when they're saying this, they're saying, Moses is saying, my replacement needs to know how to do this for battle. Now, that's exactly what Caleb is saying. He goes, I'm just as strong today for leading them out to war and bringing them in from war. So, what does going out to war mean? Let's look at that a little further. What does going out to war mean? Every time they would come in from war, the first place they would go was to the tabernacle. The first place coming back from war, they would go to the tabernacle. So they would come in and worship. They would come in and thank God for their victory. They would come in and thank Him. So, coming in is worship, going into the tabernacle. But it's not just after the war. What would happen is they would also come in during the war. What to do, the leader of the regiments would send them in troop by troop and have them come in, and they would go to the temple. And why would they do that? Because they needed a break from the war. They would come in, go to the temple, and they would worship God. Now, a lot of them, they didn't even go home and visit their families. What they would do is they'd go to their house and they would sleep in their doors. They'd sleep in the door cells and not even visit their family, because they needed to be refreshed for war, and they wanted to focus on worshiping God and then going back out to war. So, understanding the principle of coming in is coming into God's presence, and it's not just on the weekend. You need to come into God's presence every day. The reason is that because every time you leave your front door, I guarantee you're going out to war. Every time. So you need to come into God's presence. Come in every morning if you can do it. And I recommend you do. Whatever it is. Get in your routine. Turn on your radio. Turn on your message. The Bible being read to you in your car. Come into God's presence every day. Because as soon as you leave, you're going to war. And that's true. It's true for us. It happens every day for us. We try to do that every day. So this principle every believer needs to hear is called worshiping God. Not just singing a few songs, but coming into His presence, meditating on His Word, listening to Him, talking to Him, being filled afresh daily with the Spirit of God. That is what we need to do when we come in. That's what worshiping is. It's not just singing songs. It is worshiping our Lord. It's exactly what He's referring to when He says going out to war. So let me tell you what going out refers to. Going out is not from His presence. It's going out with His presence. Yeah. So when we come in, we worship the Lord. We're all saved. So what we do is when we go out with His presence. And we take Him with us. Somehow we get the idea when we come to church and meet with God, when we leave, He stays in the church. Now, the best thing I can explain this, or the only way I can explain this as is like when I was little, there was a church we would go to, and every day we got there would be a preacher waiting at the door. He'd come in, he'd welcome us, shake our hand, we'd go in, we'd listen to a sermon, and when we were leaving, he'd be at the door again telling us goodbye. So I really thought he lived in the church. I thought he lived in the church. You know, and while we were gone all week, we had never, being honest, I never really thought about anything about church when I was gone all week. I was playing football and things kids do, playing with G.I. Joes, you know, stuff like that. And when we went back to church, there was the preacher. He was still there. So I really thought that he lived there. So it's kind of like that now with a lot of people. The only time they come and worship is when they come to church. When they walk in and they'll raise their hands and they'll sing and praise. And I'm not, please hear my heart on this. I'm not getting on anybody. I'm saying they'll come to church, they'll praise and worship, and then when they leave, there'll be another thought about it for the rest of the week. Daily, we need to come into His presence. And then wherever we go, we need to take His presence with us. I really thought He lived in the building, so. All right. Sunday mornings, when you were kids, who remembers that? Going to church? Now, I didn't necessarily want to go to church. Big surprise, right? So I would lay in bed and pretend like I was asleep. Of course, my mom, looking back now, my mom always knew, you know, she's like, it's all right, you stay in bed, but as soon as I leave without you, when I get home, you're getting a whipping. And back when you could get whippings, right? It's like, I'm awake. So, I mean, I really did thought he lived in the church. Anyway, when we go out with His presence, that's what gives us the power to face the day. And that's what we need to do. And that's what He's been working on me with. This has been in my spirit very, very, very powerfully for the last couple of years, actually. And it's something that we really need to make a habit in our lives. Yes, it's tired. Yes, you have things going on. Yes, there's family and kids and problems. Yes, the car problems. Yes, the Volvo stinks. But every day we wake up, come into His presence, and take Him outside with us. Now, going out refers to witnessing. Let me tell you why. The reason Israel went to war in all of its history was to show the world that their God was the true God. That is the reason Israel went out and went to war. It's to show the world that their God was the true God. That's what it was all about. And the reason God chose Israel was not because they were the best nation. It was not because they were the strongest nation either. It was because they were the least. In Deuteronomy 7, it says, God chose Israel not because they were the greatest, but because they were the least. Now think about that. Think about Israel being the smallest. Basically, God looked around the world and He saw a country that was smaller than the state of Rhode Island and said, I pick you. I'm going to use you. Because think about it. Why would major countries tremble in their boots when a country smaller than the state of Rhode Island threatens to attack them? Because their God was the true God. And that's exactly why He picked Israel. That is the main reason. The smallest nation in the world makes the biggest nations tremble in their boots. If you ever read anything about the 6-day, 7-day war, some people call it 7 because there's newspaper clippings where these massive tank battalions from Saudi Arabia were coming to the border and stopped dead in their tracks and turned around. And they interviewed, I don't know how many hundreds of those people in those tanks and said that there was a wall of angels. Now, were they seeing things? Were they smoking things? Were they, you know what I mean? I believe they really saw them. I really do. I really think they did. Yeah. Israel showed the strength of God and the power of God. When we go out with the presence of God, we go out with His power and His strength, and we are to demonstrate to the world our God is the true God. So when we come in, we go into His presence. When we go out with the power and the strength of God. That's what we do. Our God is over every sickness, right? Our God is over every disease, every bondage. Our God is the God. Every addiction, our God is the true God. Now, that's the reason we go out to witness. We go into worship, we go out to witness. 1 Samuel 18:12. Now Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from his presence and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Therefore, when Saul saw that he behaved very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he, what? He went out and he came in before them. I told you, I've seen that verse so many times and never really understood what they were talking about till now. Exactly what Solomon was saying. My father knew how to do this. And if I'm going to be king, I need to know how to do that. Now, let me show you something in Scripture here that really interesting about David. Now, I read a lot about this and I understood a lot about David, but I never really put it together until all this started coming together for me. Think about the principle of coming in and going out. 2 Samuel 11. It happened in the spring of the year at the time when kings do what? Go out to battle. That David sent Joab and his servants from him and all Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at church. He remained at Jerusalem. Then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed, walked on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold. I have one simple question for you. If David had gone out to war like he was supposed to do, would he have ever seen Bathsheba? No, he would not. That's the reason for his fall. When you, as a king, you go out to war and you come in. And he stayed when he was supposed to be going out. So when we're not doing what we're supposed to do, when we're staying in the church, when we're not going out witnessing like we're supposed to, then we're not doing what we're called or meant to do. You cannot just stay in the church and say, you know what, we're going to change the world within these four walls. We need to go out. We have to go out with the presence of the Lord. And that's what we need to do to change the world. To change our city. Let's start in this building. We change the building, we change the city, we change the state, we change the nation, and we change the world, right? But you have to leave. You have to get out of the church. He should have been going out fighting the enemy instead of just been staying in the church. We need to go out and fight the enemy. Listen, God did not design us to be a reservoir. He designed us to be a river. Heard that somewhere today. Told you about that, didn't I? We're supposed to always be flowing out and flowing in. Okay? We have to be doing both. If you ever stop from flowing out, you begin to stink. You get contaminated. Who has a pond? Anybody? Ever been to a pond? It starts to stink. It gets contaminated. There's no flowing out. There's no flowing in. When you quit witnessing, when you quit sharing your life, when you quit ministering to people, you're headed for a fall. That is what the flowing in and the flowing out is. When we quit witnessing to people, when we stop ministering to others, we get stagnant. Oh yeah, and if you just flow out without flowing in, you're going to dry up. You can give, and you're going to dry up. You need to have flow in also. You need to have a team, friendships. You need to have family. You need to have people around you ministering into your life. You can't just flow out all the time. You need to have some flow in. You're going to get very, very dry. We have to do both things. We have to worship and we have to witness. We have to have both of those things. Luke 14:11. I'm going to read kind of the New Testament version of a little example about what this is in Luke 14, verse 11. Now, when one of those who sat at the table with him heard these things, he said to him, "Blessed is he who shall eat bread of the kingdom of God." Then he said to him, "A certain man gave a great supper and invited many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, 'Come, for all things are now ready.' But they all, with one accord, began to make excuses. The first said to him, 'I have bought a piece of ground, I must go see it. I ask you to have me excused.' Another said, 'I bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm going to test them. I ask you to have me excused.' Still another said, 'I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come.' So the servant came, reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city and bring in here the poor and the maimed and the lame and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it's done as you commanded, but there's room. Then the master said to the servant, go out into the highways, the hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of these men who are invited shall taste my supper. Now, this is Jesus talking, okay? I like to call this the parable of the excuses. Now, why did Jesus list all these excuses? He knew that people were going to make every excuse possible. Think about that. And if you look back at these excuses, the one I like the best is where the guy says, he said, I just got married, I can't come. So he didn't even have to explain that. Everyone understood what he meant. You know, I just got married, my wife won't let me come. So, anyway, I knew Rebecca would get that one right. Jesus used these excuses to show there's no valid excuse to accept the free gift of God. I don't go to church because there's hypocrites. Now, come on. Everywhere you go in life, there are hypocrites. There are hypocrites. There are hypocrites at the mall. There are hypocrites at the store. There are hypocrites playing golf. Let me tell you what, there's a lot of hypocrites when you play golf. So, that's not a valid reason. I don't know how to witness. I can't afford to tithe. I don't know how to witness. Now, think about this. Witnessing is the easiest thing you can do as a believer. All you have to do is tell what God did for you in your life. 5 minutes after you're saved, you can witness. I'm not talking about evangelism where you're equipping people. I'm talking about witnessing. You're telling people what God did in your life, how He changed your life. That's not an excuse. We need to worship, but we have to witness. Witnessing, it's the easiest thing in the world. Stop making excuses. Share the heart of God. Share His heart. What does Jesus want? This breaks my heart. They're sitting around, they're eating, everyone's eating, and someone says, when we get to heaven, we're going to sit with you, we're going to be with you all the time, and we're going to eat and eat and eat, and we get to sit with you all the time. You'll have a wonderful time. Now, I want you to notice where Jesus' mind goes immediately on this. His mind doesn't go immediately to the people that are there eating with Him. He goes immediately to the people that aren't there. In this parable, He's saying, go out, get these people, get the people off the highway. His mind is on who is not there. That's what Jesus is trying to say there. There's an urgency in His voice. He's saying, basically the picture I get is everyone's sitting around a table like a big buffet, like Thanksgiving, and everyone's eating, and Jesus is there, and we're all sitting there eating, and Jesus looks at the window, and there's starving children looking in the window with their faces pressed against the window. And He looks at them with tears running down His face, and He goes, would you please get your feet out from under the table and go tell them there's a place at the table for them. And it's already been paid for. Please, tell them to come in and eat. And that's what it's like. Everyone's sitting at the table. They're warm inside. They're filling their guts. And they're sitting at this table, and there's people outside that don't know that. They have a gift, that they have a free ticket to this meal that's already been paid for. Please, just go tell somebody. Witness. Tell them. Now, do you realize how blessed you are if you have a place you can go every Sunday or every Saturday night, once a month, whatever, where you can go and you can fellowship and you get a good message and you get fed. Now, do you know how many people out there are not getting that? And they may go to church and they're not getting a good message. They're not getting fed that way. Now listen, it's our responsibility to go out and to witness and to talk to these people and invite them in. All of you have churches you go to. You know, you're all sanctuary people. There's no reason we shouldn't have people just coming in here to be fed. It's our responsibility. We need to worship, but we need to witness also. We need to start sharing our faith. What do we do when we fall in love with somebody? Two things. What do we do when we fall in love with someone? Now, if you ever had a friend that's fallen in love, then you know exactly what that is, right? Guys know this. Ladies, if you're curious if a guy loves you, ask a guy, because a guy will know, because he just disappears. He just disappears. You'll never see him again. Pretty soon everyone asks, where's Marcus? Where's Marcus? Where'd Marcus go? Marcus was here. Where'd he go? Then one day, we'll see him standing outside a store in the mall holding a purse. This is what happens when you fall in love. All us guys know Marcus got caught. He's in love. No, but when you fall in love, you do two things. First of all, you want to spend all your time with them. You want to spend all your time together when you fall in love. And if you're not with them, you want to talk about them all the time. Right, Rebecca? We have been inseparable since we've met. And when we had to be apart, we talked on the phone the whole time, or we were telling people about each other. So when you fall in love, there are two things. We need to fall in love with Jesus. We need to spend all of our time with Him, and when we can't, we need to be talking about Him all the time. That's important. Now, I'm going to read something to you a story that I heard today. Well, it was a few days ago, but has anyone ever heard the Teddy Stollard story? If you have, you'll understand, but if not, let me just read this to you. This is about being a witness in maybe a different way than you think, all right? So Teddy Stollard, as she stood in front of her 5th grade class on the very first day of school, she told the children an untruth. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and said that she loved them all the same. However, that was impossible because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he did not play well with other children, and his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath. In addition, Teddy could be unpleasant. It got to the point where Miss Thompson would actually take delight marking his papers with a broad red pen, making bold X's and putting a big F at the top of his papers. At the school where Miss Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off until last. However, when she reviewed his file, she was in for a surprise. Teddy's 1st grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He's a joy to be around." His 2nd grade teacher wrote, "Teddy's an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he is troubled because his mother has a terminal illness and life at home must be a struggle." His 3rd grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest that his home life will soon affect him if some steps aren't taken." Teddy's 4th grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and he sometimes sleeps in class." By now, Miss Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her Christmas presents for Christmas, wrapped in beautiful ribbons and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in a heavy brown paper that he got from a grocery bag. Miss Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the other presents. Some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some stones missing and a bottle that was 1/4 full of perfume. But she stifled the children's laughter when she exclaimed how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day just long enough to say, "Miss Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On that very day, she quit teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy. As she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class, and despite her lie that she would love all the children the same, Teddy became one of the teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy telling her that she was still the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 6 years went by before she got another note from Teddy. He then wrote that he had finished high school, 3rd in his class, and she was still the best teacher he ever had. 4 years after that, she got another letter saying that while things had been tough at times, he'd stayed in school, stuck at it, and would soon graduate from college with high honors. He assured Miss Thompson that she was still the best teacher he had ever had. 4 more years passed and yet another letter came. This time he explained that after his bachelor's degree, he decided to go further. The letter explained that she was still his best teacher, and now his name had gotten a little bigger. The letter was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. The story does not end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he had met this girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago and was wondering if Miss Thompson might agree to sit at the wedding in the place that his mom would usually sit. Of course, Miss Thompson did. And guess what? She wore that bracelet, the one with several rhinestones missing. Moreover, she made sure she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered in Miss Thompson's ear, "Thank you, Miss Thompson, for believing in me. Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference." Miss Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, she said, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you." Yeah. So, now, that story's been read a lot of places for a lot of people. It's true, whether it's true or not. Here's the deal. We witness to people. We witness to people whether we speak words or not. So when we worship, we come in and we come into God's presence and we go out with Him and we get to tell them. We get to love on them and we get to invite them to meet the one that loves us the way that we love Him. So, whether you know or not.